Hello everybody. How you all doing? I hope you're well. As you can tell, I still have that weird croaky voice, but that's okay. We can still read, and it's a lot better than it was on Monday, and also I think it was Friday that I had read, where it was really hard to hear. Anyway, so we're getting there. Yes, I do still have the throat lozenges in case I need them. So we'll see how we go. And if my hair's looking a bit weird, it's because I ended up, because our weather is really changeable at the moment, going and having a shower earlier on, and so normally it's dry by now. It's not at the moment because it's really humid, and we've got a fire going downstairs because it was cold this morning, and now the sun is kind of shining outside, so it's getting extra warm, so I might just have to get up and open a door. Let it cool down slightly, but we've also got this whole extra humidity at the moment too, and it's just strange. And apparently we've got snow working its way up the country at the moment, a cold snap with snow. We are in spring here in New Zealand. This is currently spring, and apparently this sort of weather's not quite so unusual in spring, but usually we don't get quite the amount of predicted snow that they are predicting for us. In Wellington, no less. Wellington is our capital, and it's kind of lengthwise, it's in the middle of the country. It's at the bottom of the North Island, which actually kind of overlaps a little bit with the South Island in terms of position of position of the two islands. Just doing it so you can see it the right way rather than me looking at it the right way. We always get snow in the South Island in winter. We have mountains in the South Island. They're called the Southern Alps, and the ones that you often see really dramatic photos of, that's where they are. Although sometimes you will see photos of one that looks kind of a little bit like Mount Fuji's shape, that's like this, with snow on the top. That's actually in the North Island, and it's down that's Taranaki, also known as Mount Egmont. And if you go down there's a part of the North Island that's this shape, and then it kind of kicks out with a bump, and in the middle of that bump is where that particular mountain is. And then in the centre of the North Island there is a cluster of 3 mountains. All of our mountains are volcanic ones basically in the North Island, and that's Tongariro National Park, which has Mount Ruapehu, Mount Tongariro and Mount Ngauruhoe, and Ngauruhoe is the one that is volcanically active usually, although when we were living in England, Ruapehu decided it was going to be a little bit rebellious and blow the top off, and so it's shorter than it was. Anyway, so those mountains always have a bit of snow on, although not skiable snow, the ones in the North Island. And the ones in the South Island, the places where the ski fields are no good, except in the middle of winter. But Wellington might get a little bit of a light dusting of snow, but not enough for it to hold in winter. But we'll see how it goes, because my daughter lives in Wellington. She's going to tell us what it's like. But apparently the weather is dropping down to 3 degrees tonight, and we've got more cold coming. It works its way up from Antarctica. We've got nothing that stands between New Zealand and Antarctica except for open ocean. And so if there's a weather pattern that's moving its way up from down south where the South Pole is, then it works its way up the whole of the length of the South Island. It's the North Island comes up. We will get colder weather than what we've currently got, but it won't get anywhere near as cold as that. My grandfather said, I remember my grandfather saying that at one stage he had seen snow on the hills across the big it's kind of like a lake. We've got a big bay that's got lots of small bays around it. The bay that I live in is part of that collection of lakes. It's kind of this shape, and you've got an island. You've got an island here, a peninsula here, and a peninsula down here. And so there's an opening up here and there's an opening down here. And this has some taller hills. They're not mountains, just taller hills, but they head over towards the sea. That's the open ocean over there. And where we are is down here. And the house that he was living in there looks across that way towards where those hills are. And actually I can see some of those hills too. He said he remembered seeing snow on the tops of those hills. Not enough to stay, but it was cold enough that some snow fell and they saw it, and it was not wintertime. And then obviously the air warmed up and it all melted and it didn't last. But yeah, very, very unusual, incredibly unusual to have that. And we're not expecting anything like that. But we've got the wind is starting to pick up again. I wouldn't be too surprised if we get more wet weather with it, because as the clouds that bring snow across the South Island and Wellington head further north, it gets to warmer air, because most of our air currents where we are in this part of New Zealand tend to come down from the Pacific Ocean, so it's a bit, it's not warm, it's not tropical, but it's been tropical, so it's still got a bit of warmth to it. So where those two air patterns meet, it will probably turn to rain, so we're probably going to get a lot of rain, and it'll be a bit cold rain. But hubby has been out getting in the firewood, splitting firewood, stacking up dry firewood underneath the porch roof out the back, so that if it does get, for us, cold, we actually then get to have the fire going and stay nice and warm, and also it'll heat our water. We do have electricity that heats the water, but we've also got a wetback on our fireplace, and that heats the water too. And we've also got some water heating solar panels on the roof. So in the summertime, we actually have it that way too. Mainly because heating up your water for showers and baths and washing dishes and all that sort of stuff, it uses more electricity than anything else that happens in the house. So it's a good way to keep the power bills down. So yeah, that's how it is at the moment for us. We'll see how it goes. Have you noticed anything different on the setup today? Those of you who are watching on Twitch live with me at the moment, I'll carry on talking, and you can see if you decide that you want to say something about that, if you've seen it or not. Good to see you here too, JJ, as well as Aunt and Coleslaw. Great to have you all here. And I know that lurking around in the background, because they're at work actually, and they're just checking things on the phone, probably, sorry, my brain just went blank. Gariki. Yeah, the holder thing, the little hype cup has been moved over here instead of being over here. And I can't remember why I did it, but I think it was probably because the throne alert thing is meant to be down here. And if that triggers, it won't. Oh, Gariki, you didn't, did you? He did. Now, I have to get something that will do a pop-up when we get someone redeems. Gariki has redeemed Area. What's all this about then? And I can't remember why I did it. Yeah, of course. So that's another thing, is he and I have been talking through different things I can do to improve my stream setup. Not necessarily what I do, because other people try to tell me what I should do, like don't talk as much. Anyway, and then I tell you guys that, and you guys all go, no, we like that. So yeah, darn it, quote. I can't remember why I did it, darn it. Yeah. Okay. It's turned off, of course. Yeah, I don't have a setup for quotes, and you're going to have to talk me through how to do that sometime, but not necessarily now. So one of the things that we talked about was channel points, which is where you click down at the bottom of the chat box. And every time I describe this, I'm always describing it as you see it in your browser window. I'm sorry about that. Or if you're using the app on a desktop computer. I can't remember exactly how it works or what it looks like on a mobile device. So you're going to have to just explore. But channel points, I've got the usual hydrate, unlock a random sub, highlight my message, choose an emote to unlock, even though I've only got one at the moment. I choose an emote to modify, which I think is just turning it sideways or something like that. But I did put in bend and stretch, which most people have as a stretch. You know, you got to do something to stretch yourself out. But one of the ones I did put in there that's a new one on mine was area, what's all this about then? Or what's all this about? Sorry, Kariki. Yes, it's probably turned off. I suppose you want me to allow you to be able to turn things on directly rather than just through chat commands. I'll see if I can turn that on because I don't know what the standard ones are. Let's see if I can find it, as well as trying to remember what it is I'm going to tell you guys. I don't think I've got a quotes one, Gariki. No, I don't. You're going to tell me how to do it. And Cole's, okay, I'm going to bend and stretch. Bending and stretching. Because, yes, I have been sitting long enough. So, area, what's all this about then? I need to dig in my little, you get random at this stage because I haven't yet figured out a storage system. You know how when it was Dr. Dolittle, I was wearing ears? Well, I realised I've got enough ears collected up that I could actually have them as a redeem, plus add to my collection of ears, by the way. The pain. Okay, Kariki. Now, I could start off and just be mean and do a cute little sparkly thing like this for his redemption of what's all this about. Or we could go, in honour of Goriki being in Japan, we could go Hello Kitty. Except it's not kitty ears. It should be. I know. So I've got a cute new one. Yes. Call it ASMR. It's not, but call it that. So what I've got is I do have a number of other sets of ears that and hairbands, which I want to add things to, that I could actually add into, make them available. And I want to do it so that they're in little containers. It's a little bit like which number, pick a number. Someone picks a number and they don't know which one they're going to get. So it's a bit random. So here you go. This is for Goriki. Hang on. I'm just trying to get my hair out of the way so that it's a bit... There you go. You get a fluffy one today, Goriki. For now. I haven't got a timer on it yet. See? There you go. Let's just change it a little bit. Right, I should probably change... it to where my camera is anyway. So, yeah, playing around with different redemptions and stuff on my channel, but I also want to do some which are technically, I think they're called loyalty points. That doesn't sound right. He's going to tell me that I've got the wrong word for it. I can't remember the right word for it at the moment. The points that are done through Stream Elements. I haven't got that side of it organised yet. I'm going to. I'm also going to do some. The points that you can redeem, yeah, loyalty points. That is loyalty points. Because the reason I forget it is because to me loyalty points are the points that you get when you're shopping at the supermarket and you use loyalty cards. It's meant to be the same idea. It's just that for some reason my brain always only associates it with groceries. I don't know. It just is like that. No, they're not ears. It's meant to be a little wee halo, but I've just changed the shape a little bit because it's only out of wire. Doesn't show up very well against the sky. But I've got a box with my other hairbands behind me which I can have a dig in. So if somebody else does redeem area what's all this about, I will actually dig out the other hairbands with ears and without ears and stuff like that, and you will get a random choice just depending on what I pull out. So the loyalty points are for, you do the same sort of idea with redemptions, but I can set it up when I get that far to have sort of like a little pop-up with an animated GIF or a video or a sign, not a sign, an animated GIF or a video or an image, which can also have a sound that goes with it, which just sort of comes across the screen as a redemption. So Goriki's really good at using those sort of things because he's got ones where if any of the other readers are of certain readers in the Codex group, Codex, arrive in chat, then he or any of the ones who are high enough level on his channel can redeem points, and it will pop up with this thing. And so his one, because we're all readers, will have some sort of book thing associated with the image for it. And I'm doing terribly with words today, I know. Time for class. Okay, go for it, go Ricky. He's teaching this afternoon. So good to have you here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if you other fat people in chat misbehave, don't be surprised if he suddenly turns up and thumps you with the mod hammer, even if it's not a band hammer. So just because he's not here visibly doesn't mean he's not here. Sorry, that's just reference to the fact that Go Rek is one of my mods, and is likely to be here, whereas my other mods aren't, just because of time of year. And time of other people that they mod for too. So Joel, my son, is one of my mods. He's really good at modding too. Different level of modding to what Go Reki does. He does a lot of setting up stuff, but my son does a lot of just sitting in a friend's, become a good friend's stream, in the chat, and making sure that people keep their behaviour in order, because this guy gets a lot of randoms dropping in. Welcoming people when they arrive, getting involved with conversations, just steering things in the right direction, but also he helps with making sure that they don't get bots and stuff like that. And I promise I'm not going to do a big long rant about bots today, okay? If you want to know about bots, then go and join our Codex Discord server. Codex, I'm pointing at the logo for you. I shall give you the link for it. So Codex has a Twitch team, which I am part of, so is Go Reki. And if you follow the Twitch team, sorry, JJ, are you meaning that you can't pick what the picture is of, or that you just can't actually access it? I'll carry on talking while chat gets a chance to catch up with what I just said. So we're in the Twitch team, and that's like a normal Twitch team. If you go to the link for it, which is the first one of those two links that I've just put in chat, it will show you who's currently live. So obviously I'm going to be live, but there may or may not be others live. Go Reki and I are the only ones in this particular part of the world. He's 3 hours, maybe 4 hours at the moment, because I'm on summertime, behind me. So he's still working, teaching at school at the moment. And then the others are North America and I think Europe. I'm not sure at the moment. But the other link that I put in the chat is for our Discord server. You can join the Discord server if you want to actually just find out what's going on about. It will start to come together. You should have up on the toolbar above it, JJ, if it's anything like the picture that I'm seeing on the chat here, in the middle of that toolbar, you've got a picture of a hand, then a dotty rectangle, and then an icon like for a GIF. If you hover over that icon in your browser, not on my overlay, but when you're doing the puzzle, it should actually show you a temporary image of what your puzzle looks like. I'm not sure if that's showing it to you or not, just because that's the way, that's all I can see. Yeah, there's a lot of colours in this one. After all the ones yesterday, last time, that were all snow and things like that. What was it I was going to say? Oh yeah, so if you go to join our Discord server, there's a section there, called a channel there. No. Yeah, there's a channel. So my head is flipping between forums and Discord servers because they're similar but they're quite different. So Discord, different people's ones are called servers, and then within them you have channels, which are different sections. Sorry about that, JJ. It didn't like the fact that you typed that all in all caps. You know what it is now. Cool, great. I'm so glad you do. It's just there's there you go. I think I allowed your message through. I'm not sure. I'll just see if I can see it in another window. No, no, no. Don't give me that. Thank you. Um, I'm trying to, I'll just paste it in for you. For some reason, I can't actually get it to just release your message. But it's only going to keep you timed out for 30 seconds. So as long as you don't do too many too often, I don't want it to ban you. But that should, yeah, you know what it is now. And you know why I chose that, don't you? At the moment, right. And also with the way the picture is at the top of the picture, you can probably pick what it is. So yeah, if you join the Discord server and go to the channel called Security, you will find the various posts that Goriki has made about running security on your Twitch channel, or if you mod for somebody, things that are worth knowing. There are a lot of those are comments that a lot of the posts that he's made I've also shared with my son, and he puts those into practice. It's not just about using something like Twitch Insights to know if something's a bot, because Goriki will actually tell you about the sort of behaviours that bots have which enable him to be able to pick that something is a bot before Twitch Insights will recognise that something's a bot. He will often pick that an account is a bot account at least a month, sometimes 6 weeks before it's actually recognised as a bot externally by something like Twitch Insights. So don't just rely on Twitch Insights, which is a link I've given you before. And it might seem hard work at the beginning, but it's not going to stay hard work. You're not going to have to be banning hundreds of bots all the time. Usually if you've got bots sitting in your account, once you've banned all those ones, you'll get them coming in dribs and drabs unless somebody has done a major creation of bot accounts. And usually within about 3 days, Twitch will have got on top of that and deleted all those accounts, because other people will be reporting them as well. Anyway, so that's enough. I'm not going to talk any more about security for your stream or for who you mod for, or so that you, as part of my community, actually know that, yes, I love you and care for you and try to look after you. Anyway, so what are we going to do? So, yes, the changes that have happened is I moved the hype cup over here. I can't remember why. I think it was just mainly because the throne alert that runs over here doesn't necessarily show well. They kind of tangle with each other when they're going up. The coffee alert that's down below that, coffee is for if anyone wants to give me a tip. No, not donations, tips, because donations, you need to be a charitable organisation, and I'm not going there today either. That one will scroll up the screen and eventually that will show. So no worries. Hi, melodramatic elephant. I think it, yeah, elephant. Ella. Great, yes, wonderful. My alert worked. And congratulations on being the first one to use my new alerts. Thanks for being here. It's great to have you here. Right, my brain is a little bit at the moment. Sorry about that. That was the other thing I was going to say, is I now have alerts, and now you've seen them. Perfect timing, absolutely. The overlay I currently use actually has alerts with it. I just had to tell it to use alerts, enable them. But it's because I wanted to use my styling on it. It meant I wanted to change the colours instead of being bright, not royal blue, but kind of one of those bright blues, kind of like this blue, one of these blues, and a very green turquoise, which is a colour that's used in this overlay. I wanted it to be the turquoise that I use and the blue that I use, which has a hint of purple in it. And so that meant going through all of the alerts, changing that. And then I discovered I can change the font to match what I call my font, such as where it says story time up there. But it meant I had to go through every iteration of the alerts, including the ones for different levels of bits and subs and all those other things that Twitch automatically handles when you've got it set up. And so it was like, I think I've done them all, and then I was going around in circles and all that sort of stuff. But we got there. And they work, yay. And I reckon the actual way I've got the colours working actually work better than their original. So that's good. Right, what else? Oh yeah, right up the very top of the screen there, I've got latest follower, latest sub, and also total of subs, just because some people like knowing that sort of thing. And I get hassled by other people who I know who are streamers who have that sort of thing going on in theirs, and they say, but people want to know these things. So I'm like, okay, but which bits are relevant for me and my channel? So that's what we've currently got. We'll see how it goes. And if you find that scrolling effect that they've got too distracting, let me know, because I can turn it off. It just means opening up something else to turn it off first. But that's okay. We'll get there. So I'm really, really pleased because I got several things done. And thank you so much for following Melodramatic Elephant. And I'm going to guess that your name is Ella. Cool. There was something else I needed to think about, and I'm trying to figure out what it was. And I can't remember what it was. Oh, right. Well, let's just get on with being high and everything else that goes. Oh, yeah, thank you, Q. I really need to do an emote or something like that, or a redemption for 3 tips, because it just seems to be so much a feature of what we do here, isn't it? And Jonathan's not here with us to remind me today, so thank you, Coleslaw, for reminding me. I appreciate that. Right. Hi. If you're new here, I'm Jev. It rhymes with Jeff, but with a V. And every time it's written, it always has 3 V's. I'm Jev in NZ, New Zealand, just in case you're wondering. Hence the odd accent if you're not a New Zealander or an Australian. They think ours is odd though anyway. I read old children's books, ones like this, excuse me, like these sort of ones. So this one is over 100 years old. This one is 125 years old. These are the sort of books I grew up reading because they were the ones that were available in our house. They were the ones that, sorry, I'm just going to take this off at the moment because the fluff at the top is distracting me. I'll just put the cute sparkly little star flowers on instead. I'll see if I can get that to show a bit better. There they are. Cute sparkly little flowers. I'll put those on instead, just to keep the hair out of the way, because it does irritate me at times. If he comes back, tell me if Koriki comes back and I'll put the other one back on, unless someone wants to redeem another thing. Anyway, so I read old children's books. I grew up reading them because those were the books that were available when I couldn't get books from the library because it was school holidays or weekends, or I'd finished all the books, or the books at school were boring, or anything else like that. So I just went digging through the boxes of books and the shelves of books that all my grandparents had, because, yeah, my grandparents were readers. And so I found all these old books and then discovered that they were a little bit different from the ones that you get at school library, which are a lot newer. And they were about places and things and activities and ways of living that were different to what the newer books were being written about, just because they were written in a different time period. So even if they were written in an imaginary place, they would still reflect on the worldview of the author. I don't know if you realise it, but every author, when they're writing, still imparts a little bit of their own personal worldview into what they write, even when they don't intend to. And you do, as a reader, you do pick up on that a little bit. The more you read, the more you pick up on that. Some of it aware, some of it unaware. Anyway, so I grew up with this, and I knew that the world was round, that people lived on the other side of the world. I'd been to the other side of the world. I had spent time in Australia because that's where I was born. I had spent time in Canada because half of my mum's family came from Canada. I had a great aunt and uncle who had lived in China for 7 years before it became a communist country. They used to talk about it. So not everything I learned was from the books I was reading. Some of it was actually also from having conversations with elderly people or people who appeared to be elderly. But just because I grew up with my one set of grandparents next door, the other one's just up the road, my great aunt and uncle lived across the paddock behind us, things like that. And so it was quite normal to spend a lot of time with these other relations, more so than a lot of other children did. And I didn't realise that until in the later stages of secondary school, talking with other friends at school. I discovered that one of my friends was best friends with her cousin. And that was very unusual because most people only saw their cousins during school holidays. They didn't go to school with them. And I'm like, I know my third cousins better than most of them know their first cousins. And I realised that the way I grew up and the things I lived with were different to most other people, but added into that were the layers of understanding that I had gained from reading old books. There you go. We've got a cute little frog, one of the Amazonian ones, I think. Because of my voice today, I feel still very croaky, but not quite as likely to cough. I do have my throat lozenges just in case. Red-eyed tree frog in Costa Rica. There you go. And I shall get you another another jigsaw puzzle to do. So if you give me a moment, I'll get that one going. Did we do Mountain Chalet last time? I've got a feeling we did. We'll do this one. Hi, Squibble. Great to see you. Lovely to have you here. I haven't done any shout-outs at all for anybody so far today. I should do. But I'm just going to get this puzzle going. This is another one that's got lots of white in it. I don't think I did this last time. I'm going to cut it down even smaller so the pieces are bigger just because there's so many pieces that are similar colour. So it's 94 puzzle pieces, and I know some of you think, oh, that's just way too easy, but I don't want it being so frustrating that people just sort of like toss it aside and aren't interested anymore. I shall just put this command in here for you when I find the jigsaw section to put it in. And I just need to check because someone's messaged me something. We've got something happening. Right, doing okay at the moment. Just had an incident happen. A friend had an incident happen, and I don't really want to leave them not cared for. They are cared for very much, unacknowledged with what they're working through at the moment. Right. I'm just checking because we've had a few posts over in our Discord server. Our very quiet, the quietest Discord server in the world may not be quite so quiet now. Idea was adding a short poem to redeem. Oh, that's a good idea. Yes. I think you kind of mentioned that on Monday's chat right at the very end as it was closing or something like that. I can't remember, but it was a brilliant idea. Clean limericks, that would be another one to do. I don't know if anyone's good at writing them on the fly, but that would be amusing. That sort of thing would be a really cool idea to do as a redeem for channel points. And yes, the friend is doing okay, so that's great to know. I just needed to keep an eye on that because their mum had just asked me to make sure that there was nothing that was going to be that I could assist with that mum couldn't help with at the time. Not that they're an adult, they live away from home. That's not a problem. Right. too many things going on in my brain. Just in case you don't know, if you're new here, I have ADHD and I'm also on the autism spectrum, which makes for a lot of fun when I'm reading. So the two aspects are I get distracted really, really easily, and then, so that's part of the ADHD thing, but then the ADHD on top of the autism spectrum means that I deep dive into information. My brain just soaks up. It wants to find out more and more and more. And thankfully, lots of people who turn up here actually enjoy finding out about stuff too. And with the life experience I've got and the relatives and life experience they all have, it has meant that there's a lot of stuff that I read about in the books I already know about. We had stuff like equipment like that at home, or old words are familiar words to me, but they're not to most people my age. Or I know kind of, but I'm not sure, so I'll look it up and then we'll put pictures up on stream, all that sort of stuff. But additionally, for those of you who are new here, I usually put my videos about 2 weeks later over on YouTube. I've got a batch I need to do. I think they've run out again. I put them over on YouTube so those who can't be up at the time of day when I'm normally reading to be able to watch live can actually see them. And I've got various friends overseas who will actually catch up with me through the comments section on my YouTube videos, which is why they're not tagged as children. Suitable ones. Hi Coley, good to have you here. Great to have you here. So there you go, that's my YouTube channel. It's basically jevvv, the same as it is almost everywhere else. I think the only place that it's not jevvv is on Twitter, which is where it's just Jev with 3 V's again, and it's just Jev over there because I got in early enough that it wasn't a need to have 5 or more characters in your name. No, 6 characters in your name, that's what it was. I was able to get in early enough to be able to get 5 characters in my name. So, but otherwise that's on all the other places. It's got the NZ on the end because I started having to put 6 characters in and it was like, what am I going to do? Yet another V? No, let's just go with that. Anyway, so that's where else you can find me. So if you arrive when I'm halfway through a book, which is spread across several readings, like we're up to session 13 for this book and we're still not finished, but if you want to catch up on any previous books, or if you're willing to wait, you can catch up on the rest of a book. About 2 weeks after I've actually read it live, it will turn up on my YouTube channel. And I put them into playlists and you can listen all the way through. You will get me chatting at the beginning, in between chapters, and at the end, and interrupting myself. I don't edit any of that out. All I edit out is the rest of the overlay. So the YouTube video is only this bit. You don't get the visual of the jigsaw puzzle or the title of the book that's up there or anything else like that. And also when I'm starting, there's no starting soon screen on it. But other than that, the rest of it's all the same. I am thinking about changing my overlay setup here at some stage, but I haven't figured out what I'm doing yet. But if you are watching on YouTube and you want to know how to find me on Twitch, it's on my About page on my YouTube channel, but it's also here. See, there you go. I'm doing this just so you can read it instead of having it blanking out with the light coloured background. It's the same username, jevvv, and there's always 3 V's in it. So that's how to find me, various places. I've given you the codex links. If anyone else needs any more of those, let me know. I will give you my Discord server. And I can't remember what the short version of that is. Oh, yeah, I forgot about. Oh, well done. Thank you for putting up the disclaimer. I really appreciate that, Coastal. That's really good. So the reason why we've got the disclaimer is because they are old books, so they have a different underlying cultural basis, and each of them is different. What was okay in one time period is not okay now. What we consider to be okay now didn't used to be. Women didn't wear trousers Women didn't work outside the home, generally speaking, is the impression we've got, especially the Victorian era. That was probably the most rigid. The medieval era was a lot more open than what people realise. Most of our understanding of the medieval period has come through Victorian filters. So therefore we think that women didn't own land and businesses. They did. Not commonly, but they did. So that's part of being aware of different time periods. Also to do with the disclaimers, things that were okay in terms of how people were treated once upon a time in a lot of the books we read are not okay now. I will not avoid those things unless there's something particularly heinous. Generally speaking, though, because I'm reading children's books, they're nowhere near as rough as what some of the other things can be from different time periods in a book that's written for adults. But there are one or two words I don't read out loud. I will just put in a different word. Other than that, there is no censoring of what I'm reading, because what we're doing is we're reading something that comes from a different time, a different place, as it was written. And we can learn from it. We can use our own discernment. We can filter things as is appropriate. If I'm aware that something particularly harsh is coming up in a chapter, I don't actually pre-read all of the chapters, but sometimes I'll be aware that something's coming up that's a little bit harsh, and I may actually say at the beginning of a chapter that, if certain things like this are issues for you, then you might want to just sort of put your fingers in your ears and hum, or have a listen later on so you can skip that bit. Because if you're watching the recorded video, which Twitch has available for 2 weeks afterwards, then you can actually do that. You can skip bits, or you can make it play a lot faster. If you find my reading too fast for you, my talking too fast, then watching the video version can actually make a lot of sense for some people, because you can slow it down on YouTube and on Twitch. But if you're happy with me talking as fast as I do, then that's cool. I find that I watch YouTube videos at 1.5 times speed, because most of the time when I'm watching them, people talk so slowly. And I'm thinking, are we ever going to find out what the end of the sentence is, let alone the end of the video and the point that you're trying to make? So therefore it's part of the ADHD, my brain jumps through things very, very quickly. Anyway, let's get on with reading. Once again, I've chatted too long. Anyway, tips, three tips, which Coleslaw did remind me of before. So this is for you new people, and those who haven't yet got the habit of it. I have 3 tips, especially if you're new. Drinks, tip 1, drinks, tip 2, snacks, and tip 3 is your most favourite seat. So tip 1 is drinks. I always have water handy because it helps with the thinking, it helps with the voice, and it helps your body to function really well. I recommend making sure you drink lots of water. And if you're sick, it will help your body to throw out the various gunk that is in it from being sick. So water is brilliant, but you're allowed other favourite drinks too. So I've got the tail end of my coffee, probably only 2 mouthfuls, but I've got a bonus drink today. I have some New Zealand Schweppes ginger ale, which is a little bit more gingery than the Canadian one is. I'm telling you that now. You know it's ginger ale when you drink it. This is a little bit flat, so it's not going to make me cough and splutter. But if you open a really fresh New Zealand Schweppes brand ginger ale and then drink it fairly soon afterwards, you'll be coughing and spluttering because the ginger in it catches at the back of your throat and the bubbles just accentuate it. It's quite funny, actually. And I remember the first time as an older kid in my late teens, had ginger ale again when I was in Canada. I was offered some. And so I said, yes, please. Would you like some lemonade? Would you like some Coke? Would you like some ginger ale? And I said, ginger ale be lovely, thanks. And they gave me some ginger ale. And I had a mouthful. It was pleasant. And I said, ginger ale? Isn't this lemonade? And they said, no, that's ginger ale. I'm like, my goodness. Canadian ginger ale is not really as gingery as I'm used to in New Zealand. Well done, well done. That's snowy homes in the Cotswolds, England. The Cotswolds are a very beautiful set of hills, and it's an area of outstanding natural beauty. It's actually a recognised status for the land of that area, which includes the houses, the trees, the paddocks, all that sort of stuff, hedges. If you've ever seen a movie called, not Last Holiday, but just called The Holiday, and it's got Cameron Diaz and I can't remember the other one in it. That one's partly set in the Cotswolds. Part of it actually was filmed just down the road from where we used to live, just one little tiny section of it. I recognised it, but it's set, the story is set there, and it's gorgeous scenery. What you expect to see, when you see the postcards and the Christmas cards of old England, not the city ones, but the country ones, that is the Cotswolds. And the stone of the buildings is a beautiful honey golden colour, very warm sort of a look to it. I think it's a type of sandstone, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so tip 1 is drinks. Tip 2 is snacks. So snacks today, we have Tic Tacs, and we have the latest, whatever the special one is, tropical mix, 3 fruit flavoured mints, except I don't think they're actually mints. I think they're sweets. Going by the picture, that will be passion fruit, mango and pineapple. So this is for those of you in New Zealand who want to know what the latest thing to look for is the summer is coming style of Tic Tacs. Also some plastic cheese. Why not? I have some. I've also got a treat that's non-edible. I got a new little popper from the kids section at the warehouse, which is a little wee this is a little wee. The warehouse is a big, like a department store, but it's more set up the way Costco is, where you've got all industrial shelving and pallets and things like that. So I always keep an eye on the cute little things that they have along there, because it's a great way to have something that you can fiddle with, which doesn't take too much room up, doesn't cost too much. Brilliant for people who are ADHD and also people who are on the autism spectrum, to have something that you can do with your hands, because it allows your brain to just sort of settle a bit, be focused, be calm. Right, so drinks, snacks. We've got the cheese, we've got the Tic Tacs. We're doing well. So number 3 was your most favourite comfortable seat, unless you're working. This is my reminder for me, is this particular cushion here. I'll show you the nice pattern side of it. Yes, it's very noisy, but it's all the black bit is all done as it's flocked, so it's got that slightly fuzzy feel to it. But get yourself somewhere comfortable to sit or lie down. Grab a blanket if the weather's cold, so you can snuggle under the blanket while you're listening to the story, all that sort of thing. Just get the next puzzle going, and I'll try and get you one that's going to have a little bit more to show for the story. I don't know if we will succeed in that or not, but we'll find out. And then we'll get on with the actual story itself. Get this bit going. Let's give you 126 pieces just to make it a little bit more of a challenge, and give you a link. Getting there. Get that one out of the way. Put the link into Stream Elements, the control panel. There you go, the link is ready. You can use that one as soon as you want. Right, and I shall get on with reading the story. I do have a bonus tip, by the way. The bonus tip is, it's quite handy to have a pencil and paper ready, so that if we talk about anything, or there's a word that you come across that you don't know, write it down and look it up later on. And if you join the Discord server, you can share them with us. There's actually a section there for books, for words and also book ideas, like suggestions for new books to read. Speaking of which, I'm hoping to read some, not specifically Halloween themed, but some old English folk tales, which usually have a slightly odd feel to them. English folk tales. They kind of fit in very well with Halloween without being traditionally Halloween. And I'm trying to get permission to read you some retellings of New Zealand Maori myths and legends type thing. They're short, condensed versions of them, but they've been very nicely retold by a chap who's a movie and TV producer and writer, and made them available for our education system. But because this technically is a performance and it is recorded and it is available overseas, I need their permission. So I'm asking for that, and I'm just waiting to see what if I can do that. I've told them what it's for. So, right, let's get on with reading the story. So that will be on the 31st of October, which is a Monday. For me. So it'll be on Sunday the 30th for some of you that I will be doing that. But if I've got enough things to read, I may actually extend that forward or afterwards, either forward into the end of the week before, sort of lead up to Halloween. Otherwise, it'll be afterwards into November. We don't tend to make a big fuss about Halloween in our house nor in our country. So that's why it didn't really occur to me to do anything about it until just last time I was talking about it. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get on with the story. We had last time the children ended up putting on a small mini play as part of an end of year event type of thing that was being shown at the church, I suppose, for all the young people and their families. And marvellous end of year thing. They had yummy food, they had other activities, songs, recitations, dances, whatever else. And then the family that we follow in this story did this little play, and it worked really well. And Peggy, who had wanted to be the centre of what was going on but wasn't able to be as much the centre as she would have liked, got stage fright and realised that she was very pleased to not be leading as an actress because of the sense of stage fright, and then got so caught up in what she was doing, and the play had gone so well that they were asked to give some form of encore. So because they couldn't re-establish the story with all their props, she recited a particular poem that she had been learning, because by this stage the stage fright had gone. She was all good with it. She had thoroughly enjoying herself, and it went down really well. So that was the end of our last chapter that we had, and we are reading A Terrible Tomboy by a lady called Angela Brazel, who basically was the originator of schoolgirl stories, English schoolgirl stories. All the ones that we know of, such as Chalet, School, Mallory Towers, all that sort of stuff, all came after she started writing her schoolgirl stories. This one is not a schoolgirl story. It is the book before she started any of her schoolgirl ones. But it's about a family of children, and it's about their adventures, not about adults trying to teach them good, positive, moral lessons in a book, which is what the children's books before then had been about. So that's why it was such a groundbreaking thing that she was doing with the way she wrote. She wrote for preteens, for them to be entertained. In fact, her schoolgirl books, the majority of them, a lot of the schools banned them, and some of the schools confiscated them, and some of the schools even threatened to burn them if any of their students were found to have any of these books. They were that popular. And the reason why a lot of the schools didn't like them is because they were just so different to the typical sort of books that were written for children at the time, especially girls. Girls have to be taught how to behave themselves and do good things and do helpful things like knitting and doing needlework and helping the poor and the elderly and not doing anything for the fun of it and sitting still and not raising their voices and all that sort of stuff. And she was like, no, kids want to have fun. And so she wrote stories about kids having fun, which at the time was quite revolutionary. It's part of the reason why I like her story, the one that we've had so far. Anyway, we'll carry on. A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel. We are reading chapter 19. Oh no, they read in an interesting story. They might start thinking, exactly, that's exactly what it was, Scribble. That's exactly what the point was that the teachers were concerned about. In fact, I like that point so much, I am going to show it as a message. There you go. Oh no, they read an interesting story. They might start thinking for themselves. Shock, horror, to have girls thinking for themselves. Such a terrible thing. I love it. Very good. I'm going to try and save that comment so I can add it over to our things later on for any time I want to. Right, here we go. So we're reading chapter 19, Peggy at War. Don't mind me, I'll go back to my embroidery now. Yeah. Well, if it's your own painting that you are doing because you want to be doing it, that's fine. Scribble does glorious artwork. She does watercolours, but she also does oils that are to me, are in the style of watercolour, because she works with these thin colours and puts down layer upon layer. They're gorgeous. They really are. And they're all sorts of animals and flowers, and there's illustrations for stories. On Thursdays she does the Wizard of Oz illustrations that she's got as her own project. Sorry, I really have to do a shout out for Scribble, just because I love her work so much. And interestingly, she used to do a lot of digital artwork as well. Go and find out more about that. Go and ask her some questions on her Discord server. If you follow her Twitch channel, you'll be able to find out what her Discord server is and join it. They do little art challenges. There's a daily art challenge available. There's interesting video links get posted, as well as her doing things like, one of the things, when people do a sub to her account, she will do a little wee illustration for it. And so she's got a channel where she posts all that sort of stuff. It's wonderful. I love my Twitch community. It's fabulous. All of you, even if you're not specifically people that I have called out or shouted out or anything like that, I think you're all wonderful people. Right, let's get on with this. We are reading Peggy at War. That is the current chapter. Sorry, for some reason my thing just flipped through to something different to what I was expecting. One of my browser windows. Right. Chapter 19, Peggy at War. By this good light, a lass of matchless metal. I would say that would be Peggy. Matchless metal. Let's find out what the word metal means in this context. I have a dictionary. Somebody wrote me a dictionary command, and they have gone on and modified it. I'm telling the new people. So I know you guys know, but this is for those who are new here. They wrote it for me because I was trying to find one, and they said, there's only this one as far as we know. And then I had said what the limitations were on it for me. That word is not in the dictionary that it's calling from. That's a shame. My dictionary's not working. Anyway, so the dictionary that I use was written for me, the little widget that was created, and they have gone on and modified it a couple of times so that it has some other features as part of it. So metal in this term, M-E-T-T-L-E, means it's kind of strength of self in some ways. It's to do with courage, it's to do with a whole lot of other things like that, which is why I was going to pull it up. It pops up here. We'll probably have another word coming up like that soon. And sorry, if you're new, we have extra noise in the chimney at the moment because of the wind I was talking about right at the beginning, with the weather coming up the country, and now it's raining. We won't be getting snow up here, we'll be getting rain. It's arrived, kind of. It's not cold yet, but it has arrived. Right, so by this good light, a lass of matchless metal, which is a high praise, but a high compliment there. The Christmas holidays being over, and Archie in the rudest of health. In this context, rude means it's in full strength. His health is back to full strength. It's not diluted, it is not modified, it is not toned down. Raw raw, that sort of thing, because he's been ill. That's one of the reasons he doesn't go to school, is because he gets ill very easily. Right. Archie being in the rudest of health, Miss Forster had no more excuse for keeping that young man at home, and after much packing and preparation, he departed to school. Oh dear. So since he's got over that illness, he is having to go off to school until he gets crook again. Departed to school amid the fond regrets of his aunt and the lamentations of his friends at the Abbey, to whom he promised to write as often as time and the regulations of his house would allow him. So the school he's going to is a boarding school. They have houses. Anyone who has read or watched Harry Potter knows about houses. That's the idea. The idea that's used in there with the different houses was common for boarding schools at the time, although they are organised in a very different manner. We do not use a sorting hat for it. Anyway, after he had left, things seemed to jog on for some time in the same way, just carrying on the same as usual. Peggy was studying hard this term, for she was a clever girl. Sorry, I was just checking to make sure my dictionary thing was actually turned on. Yes, it was. For she was a clever girl and liked to take a high place in her class, so most of the evenings were occupied with home lessons, what we would call homework. And it was only on Saturday that she had any leisure for the many projects which Archie had begged her to continue in his absence. He had all sorts of ideas. Now, he was Canadian. He had come over to live with his aunt, his great aunt, I think it was, because it was considered to be better for his health and the situation that he was in back in Canada. Probably partly also to do with the sort of weather where he was from, and where he had relations that he could go and live with, because as we discussed last time, it gets very, very cold in Canada. Right. The many projects which Archie had begged her to continue in his absence, he had a lot of them. Irrigation. He initiated the treehouse, all sorts of things. Very inventive. Time steals on very quickly when we are fully occupied, and winter seemed to slide into spring, and daffodils to replace the snowdrops in the garden before they had realised the welcome change. So snowdrops are a very, very early flower in England. The ones I grew up calling snowdrops were not snowdrops, actually. Those are called snowflakes. Let's do a little wee rabbit trail here, folks. Let's see if I can find you a picture with both of them side by side. No, you should have given me a picture for that. So the ones I grew up with, as I said, are called snowflakes. But where I grew up in New Zealand, we called them snowdrops because true snowdrops don't grow in New Zealand. Well, not in our part of New Zealand, not commonly. Okay, let's have another go at this. Come on. Okay, that one shows those ones well. We'll save that. And then we will save the other one, and then we will show them. Right, here we go. Find the illustration section. And these are snowflakes. Sorry, people, if you're in New Zealand, if you've always called them snowdrops, sorry. I'll just make that slightly bigger and make it visible. These are snowflakes. You can see why we call them snowdrops, though. They've got these cute little wee droppy bits on the end where it pokes out with the white bit, and then they've also got that green. So it kind of makes sense why we called them snowdrops. These are actually snowdrops. These are snowdrops. And so if you moved to a country where you didn't have your traditional flowers that you liked, that were familiar, but you had access to something which had the same colours and had some similarities. So like these ones have got that green under there. You would very easily slip into calling them by the other one's name if your favourite ones were no longer available, but something else was kind of doing its job. So these are snowdrops, and we had these growing wild where we were in England. They were neat. It was really awesome to actually see the real things, not the ones that we thought they were. Anyway, so snowdrops. They are really early ones, not as early as crocuses. Crocuses are the ones that sort of this sort of shape with a little wee, not like tulips. They're more trumpet shaped, but without the flare out. And then they've got these petals that come up. Traditionally, they are purpley blue, but they also have white ones, and I think they may have another colour. And the pollen bits in them are what get picked and dried and is what we call saffron. So there you go. We'll carry on. If you're new, by the way, you can do the jigsaw puzzle if you wish by typing an exclamation mark and then either the word jigsaw or puzzle. No gaps, just type it straight like that, and it will give you a link. You follow that link, and then in your browser window, a second browser window, you will actually be able to do the puzzle, and then what you're doing will show up here on the stream. Right. So after the cold winter, you have crocuses come up first, and it's just these flowers that come up first, and they're just these random things. They only grow about this high out of the ground, and they look when you're not used to it, it's like, what's that poking up out of the ground? And then you realise they're flowers. And the ground is usually really cold still at that stage. And then you get snowdrops and, in the right place, I suppose, snowflakes. And then after that, you get daffodils. When you get daffodils, it's more thoroughly spring because the weather is just warm enough that they can come through. And they are after the cold and the grey and the dull, because it's not nice bright white all the time with snow. After all those weather conditions, you actually get the brightness of the yellow of daffodils, and it's, even if you don't normally like yellow, the yellow of the daffodils is just like sunshine. Even if the weather around you is grey, the yellow, the bright yellow of the daffodils is wonderful. It's refreshing. Anyway, so winter seemed to slide into spring and daffodils to replace the snowdrops in the garden before they had realised the welcome change, and Easter drew near once more with all its delights of violets, young lambs and early blossoms. It seemed a long while now to the children since Aunt Helen had gone away, and Lillian had become so accustomed to the housekeeping that it was not nearly so much of a care. So Lillian is the oldest sister. She's in her mid-teens, and because the children's mum has died many years ago, and Aunt Helen has got married and has gone with her new husband to India, back to where he had been working. She had been working as the head of the female head of the house, basically. Dad would be working on the farm. And so because she was no longer there, Lillian stepped up and took her place. And we had a little bit of a transition. It was a little bit of hard work, learning some new things. Even though she used to help, she was now in charge. So do you run on a really tight budget and everyone moans because all they ever eat is old potatoes and the cheapest cuts of meat? Or do you splash out a little bit more and then you spoil the budget and then you're going backwards because Dad is working on the farm because he's trying to earn some money to save some money so they don't lose the farm and the family property. They've been there for generations. So anyway, all this sort of stuff. We'll carry on. So that's what Lillian's doing, and that's why she's doing it. Lillian had become so accustomed to the housekeeping that it was not nearly so much of a care. She had taken up her neglected French books again, so she's not quite as stressed, so she's got room in her head to be able to study, and probably room in her day, bit of time. Neglected French books again, and struggled manfully through Paul et Virginie, and I don't have any idea if that's how you meant to say it, with the aid of a dictionary. For Peggy was getting on so fast now that Lillian felt she would soon be left behind unless she made some effort to keep up with what she'd learned. The evening readings, too, were continued, for Mr. Howell had suggested The Vicar of Wakefield as being less solid for a tired mind than the French Revolution. Definitely. Lending her his own charmingly illustrated copy. These are actually real books. You can look them up. They may even be available on Project Gutenberg, which is where I actually get my digital versions of the books that I read, usually, because I only read public domain books unless I have specific express permission to read something that is still within copyright. So if you wish to yourself, you don't have to pay for them or anything. They are available free through Project Gutenberg. You can read them online or you can read them on your devices. I'm just finding where I got to. So yeah, The Vicar of Wakefield is one and The French Revolution is the other. And father had forgotten the farm and all his other worries in a hearty laugh over Moses and the spectacles, or Mrs. Primrose's efforts at gentility, declaring that the philosophy of the light-hearted vicar exactly suited his own circumstances, and christening Lillian and Peggy as Olivia and Sophia on the spot. So these are obviously events that are happening in The Vicar of Wakefield. I'm not sure who they were written by, but if anyone wants to look those up, then that would be fine. That would be great, so we know who they're from. Finding that a success, Lillian followed it up by Pride and Prejudice. So father gets a little bit worried about the farm and saving money and earning money and that sort of thing. So it's quite good to have a little bit of a lightweight story read in the evenings, because they didn't have... Sorry, dry throat is happening. Where's it gone? I can't believe it. I had them here. I had my throat lozenge. Oh, they're there. They're behind something. I moved something. Panic. I'm just feeling the tickle. I don't want to start coughing and spluttering. They didn't have television. Definitely not. And it's probably also pre what used to be called the wireless. Or the wireless may have been around, radio, but they may not have had one because you would have to pay for one and they don't have money to spare. So they're not starving, but they don't have money for extras for living the way it's as expected of someone of their level in their local society. So finding that a success, Lillian followed it up by Pride and Prejudice. There's one. I know that one's on Project Gutenberg. And The Pickwick Papers. That's another one that's over there. So Pride and Prejudice is written by Jane Austen. The Pickwick Papers is written by Charles Dickens. Both were writing, obviously, prior to the era that this book is set. And I've actually been in the cottage, which Pickwick Papers is written set about. Pickwick Cottage. It's a real place. And it was a real place at the time that Charles Dickens wrote the book, and he used that particular cottage as the setting in his mind for the Pickwick Papers. We knew somebody who lived there, and so we went and visited them for dinner and all sorts of things. It was intriguing. It's one of the interesting things about living in England for long enough to actually be living there and working, is you don't just see the big stuff, the big touristy stuff. You get to meet people and you have points of connection to do with day-to-day things that are very real, but connect back to old history, way older than New Zealand, way older than what we're used to. Anyway, so carrying on. Getting there. For she was glad to discover anything that would wipe away the lines from father's forehead, if only for an hour, and distract his thoughts from those terrible deeds and account books which were wont to litter the dining room table at nights. Peggy, too, had begged to sit up a little later to listen, and I think she learned almost as much from the readings as from her lessons. For our English classics are an education in themselves, and those who love them young rarely care to read much trash afterwards. That's quite an observation. It's quite true, actually, in its own way. Just a wee tip, if you are starting with any of those books and you find them really, really hard going, see if you can find kind of like a mid to late 20th century children's abridged edition to read. There used to be a publisher called Dean and Sons. They did things like these sort of books where it wasn't dumbed down, it was just written with more easy to understand language, and they're a great way to get into a story that you know you're going to enjoy but is just so hard work. So for these children, these original versions would not have been hard work because they were used to that style of writing. But if you are not used to it, they can be very, very chewy, very, very hard going when you first get going with them. I read a Charles Dickens book called Dombey and Son, very typical style of Charles Dickens, that particular one. Hard going, very, very chewy. You really had to work hard to read it. And initially when I started, it was like I was having to stop and think about every sentence, what every sentence meant. I was concentrating on the words he was using. You know how I've said that some of these words that she uses, I am very familiar with, but they're old-fashioned. I said that last time. Well, Dickens even more so. Not that I had to look words up in the dictionary, it's just he was throwing together words that we don't usually have so many of in a sentence of the older ones, because that was his era. That was the way you wrote back then. And I found that what I needed to do, because I didn't have access to an abridged edition at the time because I was overseas and we were travelling, instead of concentrating on the actual meaning of a sentence, I would just skim it, read it lightly, and try not focus on what each sentence meant, and just let the words wash over me. And it took less than a chapter. It took probably half a dozen pages. Initially, I would have to do this every time I picked it up to read the next bit, if I hadn't read it for a day or two. But just letting the words wash over me without focusing on any of them too much, I started to grasp the feel of it, where he was going, what he was doing with the words, and it became easier and easier to understand. It became faster and faster to read, and then I could actually read it normally with more focus on the sentences and stuff like that. But I needed to give myself permission to do that, to just skim through it, not have to read it seriously with a lot of focus. It's just one of those things. Sometimes you have to do that. Either that or just not read it. But if you want to, start with an abridged version of a book or an audio book or a TV series or even a movie. Jane Austen is great to start off with a movie and then go to a TV series and then read an abridged version of the book and then read the original if you love those stories. Because even though they're reinterpreting it, TV series and movies, it helps you to grasp what's going on in the story and to be able to follow it. The era that most of the books I read online are is just after that difficult period. So it becomes a lot easier to follow, which is why I'm happy to read them. Anyway, we'll carry on with reading. So Peggy's actually just getting a lot out of the stories as well, which is great. I think she learned almost as much from the readings as from her lessons, for our English classics are an education in themselves, and those who love them young rarely care to read much trash afterwards. Yeah, the Victorian Lending Library style books, the 3-volume novels. Yeah, some of those are a bit trashy, but they did get more people reading than used to read. As the days grew longer and lighter, the garden also claimed attention, and the children were busy digging, raking and planting. For this year, there were to be special classes in the flower show for exhibitors under 15, like we do at our agriculture and produce show, local A&P show. You have exhibitions for flowers, for vegetables, for baking, for farm production, all sorts of things. And they show animals as well. Anyway, carrying on. This is all part of what was normal for me when I was growing up, but not for kids who lived in the city, because we lived in the country. So country schools, country town, these things happen. In fact, we still have the A&P show. If I wanted to submit baking to it, I could. I don't. I always forget. and I'm not really into baking that much. So there were going to be special classes, special sections in the flower show for exhibitors under 15, and both Peggy and Bobby's the younger brother, had secret hopes of a prize. Then there was Sky Cottage to be tidied and spring cleaned. That's their treehouse. For Archie must not come home at Easter to find it looking neglected, and there were various little improvements which they wished to make in it to surprise him on his return. It was well that they were all so full of resources for their own amusement, for otherwise than school they saw almost nothing of the outside world. The temporary attraction of Aunt Helen's engagement being over, the neighbours had lapsed again into their customary neglect of the Abbey, and visitors or invitations were as rare as if they had been living in the wilds of Africa. It seemed rather hard that sweet, pretty Lillian should be so entirely overlooked. And I think that somebody, not to say Mrs. Davenport, no, we don't want Mrs. Davenport, might have seen that she had some share in the merrymakings which went on in many of the country houses round about, but nobody remembered. And the shy girl herself was quite content to remain at home, busying herself like Dame Durden with her household cares. Somehow her old school friends seemed to have drifted away from her, because they couldn't relate to the world that she was now living in, basically. They were full of their own interests, and on the few occasions when she happened to meet them, had talked so much of new teachers, new pupils, and class topics of which she knew nothing, that she felt a little out of it, and had an uneasy sensation that, if she spoke of the quiet little episodes of her daily round, they would vote her housekeeping experiences as decidedly slow. Miss Forster, one of her kindest friends, had been unwell and confined to her room for nearly all the springtime, and the children had felt her a loss, for besides the bond with Archie, she loved young people, and had always a word of help or sympathy for their schemes. She seems like a lovely lady, actually, Miss Forster. I wonder what it feels like to be ill, said Peggy one day, coming back from the Willows, where she had been sent to inquire after one of Miss Forster's worst attacks. We're such a healthy set. We haven't any of us been a day in bed since we had measles 5 years ago. I should think it would be quite fun to send for the doctor and be fussed over, except that being ill is not comfortable. I don't think she's remembered that side of it. I suppose you feel horrid, replied Lillian, but all the same I've sometimes thought it must be rather nice to be an interesting invalid. I wouldn't have minded being Margaret, for instance, in the daisy chain, to lie on a sofa and just look beautiful, and set a good example to all your family, and keep on telling somebody you couldn't marry him, while he stalked about the room with an air of profound melancholy, and said he couldn't take to anybody else. It's a little bit of what, not the being ill, but the interactions that were in, no, they weren't in, but they were in the next book, in one of the Ellen Montgomery books, the next one after the one that I read. And it seems to be a very common sort of a theme in those sort of books. I've always thought I should like to be a foundling, said Peggy. It is so delightfully mysterious to be picked up from a wreck on the seashore, or saved from a railway accident, and nobody to know who you are, or anything about you. So a foundling is an orphan who is a found child, basically. Assumed to be an orphan. They always keep your beautiful baby clothes and the gold locket round your neck with the portrait inside, and then when you're just grown up you turn out to be the only daughter of a duke who has been mourning for you ever since you were lost. Yeah, right, in real life, no. Orphans, too, don't have half a bad time in books, though they generally live with rich uncles and have to wear the old dresses and stop at home while their cousins go to parties. Well, actually, no, in the era that they're talking about, real orphans had to go and live in an orphanage, and they were often terribly abused or misused in various ways. Not at all fun. A children's version of a poorhouse in some ways, expected to do lots of horrible jobs and as earning their keep around the place, and then expected to be so grateful for all these wonderful opportunities they had. Effectively, they were slave labour. Not really such a wonderful life after all. They own, the cousins go to parties. They only look sweeter than ever in the shabby clothes, and something nice always happens while the others are out, like Mabel, you know, in Sweet 17. I think it must be most romantic to be so beautiful and so despised. She hasn't a clue. She hasn't a clue. Will you try living with the Davenports for a while? Laughed Lillian. You'd have plenty of chance there of being sat upon at any rate. And despised. But Peggy declined with thanks, declaring the case did not apply at all. For neither was Mrs. Davenport a rich relation, nor was she herself in the friendless condition necessary for the full requirements of fiction. So she was afraid the round of amusements and social triumphs generally enjoyed by the heroine would not fall to her share. Just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I wish we did go out just every now and then, though, said Peggy, who occasionally had ambitions after gaiety. I haven't been anywhere except to Miss Forster's or the rectory since I was at the Middletons last year. So this is in the new year in England. So it's not quite as long ago. Spring is in, like March, kind of March or April, probably. So yeah, it's a few months, but it's not like I'm used to New Zealand spring is later in the year. It's like 9 months away, not 3 months away. Because our seasons are 6 months different because we're in the southern hemisphere. The girls were all, haven't been to anywhere except Miss Forster's or the rectory since I was at the Middletons last year. The girls were all talking about parties at school after the Christmas holidays, and I hadn't been to a single one, or the pantomime either. And we never get to any of the concerts at the Spa Gardens. The Harpers have asked me to their dance next Wednesday, but Father won't let me go. I wish he would, just for once. It seems so hard never to do anything like other girls, doesn't it? Sorry, I'm just going to see if this will work. It worked. Pantomime. This is my dictionary app, my widget. Pantomime, a noun, a classical comic actor, especially one who works mainly through gesture and mime. And we should soon get the alternate definitions. This is part of the upgrade that they've done for me. To make a gesture without speaking, which is what we think of as miming. And I think we're going to get another one too. That's a verb. Come on, come on, come on. I've tried to make it long enough so that if it's no. So a pantomime, in the sense I'm thinking of, is the person that they referred to in the first one. It's a pantomime is a play that somebody who is that sort of pantomime acts in. And they're kind of like preset plays. They're done as an entertainment, and you've got the bad guy and the good guy, and you hiss and boo when the bad guy comes on stage, and you cheer when the good guy comes on stage. And there's usually there's a part played that's meant to be supposedly a young man, very young, often a character called Buttons, like a servant, a footman, but in actual fact is played by a girl or a young woman, all sorts of things like this. But it's a traditional part of the time of year that that these kids have just come through. Pantomimes are plays that are put on for children as an entertainment at local theatre places and things like that around Christmas time, because it's something that you can do in winter. You can go to it as something to be entertaining. If you live in town and the weather is bad, there's not a lot to do outside. You can't go and play ball in the street, and you can't run up and down the road because it's all slushy and muddy and you get in trouble and messy and that sort of stuff. So pantomimes are one of the things to do to pass the time, especially at that time of year. So it's in the depths of winter. So that they've been missed out on that sort of thing. It's so difficult, darling, to get you home. You would catch cold if you came out of hot rooms and drove home at night in the open trap. So this is the reason why she's not allowed to go to the dance. The trap being the cart. and it is dreadfully expensive to hire a cab from Warford. That's the town that they live just out of. Besides, you would want new shoes and gloves and silk stockings, even if your bridesmaid's dress would be smart enough. If only I had had that money Aunt Helen sent me on my birthday. You should have gone. But I spent every penny on Bobby's cricket flannels. Cricket flannels are your cricket uniform if you're a boy who plays cricket, and they're creamy white. They're just what are worn. That's just what they're called. I have no idea why. And I don't like to ask Father for more. You see, we are trying to be so very careful just now. You and Bobby are not learning dancing this term, and I have even given up my music lessons, she said with a wistful sigh. For that had been a sore wrench for poor Lillian, because she's quite good on the piano, and she enjoys it. So you have, Lily mine, and never growled at all over it. I'm a horrid little wretch. And I wouldn't have taken Aunt Helen's present even if you had had it left. I don't really care about parties and things. We have ever so much fun out here at the Abbey that the girls who live in Warford never dream of, and it wouldn't be fair to expect both. Easter will soon be here, and Archie will come home, and then we shall all have glorious times again. And Peggy's momentary discontent vanished like snow in sunshine at the enthralling prospect of several new projects which her ingenious friend intended carrying out, and of the picnics, woodland scrambles, and other delights which the holidays would bring in their train. But there was yet a month of the term to run, and the little pony trap must make many more journeys to and from Warford before either Pixie or the children could take a rest. So Pixie's the old horse that draws their pony trap to take them into school in town. It's too far otherwise. And lessons and school affairs were still matters of the first importance. Accustomed to a daily account of the doings of both himself and his classmates, Peggy began to realise about this time that all was not well with Bobby. Instead of being full of his usual fun on the homeward journey, he had scarcely anything to tell her. Wonder what's going on. He had been late for several days at the inn yard because the horse is stabled over at the inn or in the paddock out behind the inn when they're at school. And then they go over there, get him ready, and then drive home. He'd been late for several days at the inn yard and had arrived looking flurried and peculiar. That, although he had laughed it off and made some excuse, she was certain that things were not as they should be. The pair had never had any secrets before, so Peggy waited at first for Bobby to tell her. But as the confidence did not seem to be forthcoming, she one day boldly taxed him with it. "Well," said Bobby, plucking at the corners of his dog-eared Latin grammar book, "if you really want to know, it's Jones Minor. I didn't mean to breathe a word because I hate to be a sneak and peach and all that, but after all, telling you isn't like telling any of the fellows, is it?" He was anxious for his code of schoolboy honour. "Of course it's not. What about Jones Minor?" It was quite typical also in that era for boys to call you. Excuse me. That one snuck up. Sorry. That definitely snuck up. For boys to call each other by their surname. And Minor means he's the younger one in the family. Sorry, trying to get the voice back. Goodness me. That's better. Right, now we can carry on, I think. So, yeah, Minor, after the surname, means he's the one of the younger ones in the family. In this context, that's the way they use it. "What is it about Jones Minor? He bullies me so. He lies in wait for me every afternoon, and I have to dodge ever so to get out of his way. I came round by 5 back streets today and climbed over a garden wall." Poor Bobby. "How big a boy is he?" said Peggy. What was the name of this chapter again? Peggy at War. Oh dear. How big a boy is he? Oh, he's a fellow of 13, I should think, for he's in the fourth form. If he were anywhere near my own size, I'd fight him, said Bobby. If I had to do it every day till I licked him, I'd fight him. I thrashed more last week for punching little Barton's head. What does this Jones do to you? Pulls my ears and bumps my head against the wall. He twists my arm around too and hammers at it and keeps a buckle strap in his pocket, especially for me, so he says. He's just generally a beast, that's what he is. I don't quite know what we can do, said Peggy. If only Archie were at home, he'd soon thrash him into a jelly and enjoy it. I suppose there's no one else at school who'd champion you. No, there isn't. Never mind, Peggotty. Don't worry. I'm growing all the time, and perhaps one day I'll be big enough to go for him. And after all, a fellow ought to be able to stand a bit of bullying without going whining home to his sister about it. Is there much of this sort of thing going on at the grammar school? Asked Peggy, because he goes to the grammar school, which is all boys, and she goes to the village school. A fair amount, not among the best end of the boys, but some of the fellows are awful cads. Okay, there's one of those older English words that I should probably look up for you. Cad, a low-bred, presuming person, a mean, vulgar fellow. The second half of that's the context. So not necessarily low-bred, because that used to be thought of as an indicator that someone was going to be inconsiderate. But, yeah, you got it. Is there much of this sort of thing going on at the grammar school? Said Peggy. A fair amount, not among the best end of the boys, but some of the fellows are awful cads. They took Holmes Major one day and held him upside down with his head in the lavatory basin till he nearly choked. And they tied 2 others up as sparring cocks today. That means to like a rooster, where they fight roosters against each other. And so tied them up like that means that basically they're probably tying them so the top of their leg and the bottom of their leg is held together in such a way that they have to sort of waddle around. Hi, shelf date, past shelf date. I'm just going to repost what you said because it's gone and timed you out. Sorry. And I really don't know how to get it to let you put that sort of comment in there without it being a problem. Not that one. I'm meant to be able to allow you to post. Oh, there you go. Unban. So you're not banned anymore, even though that was only for 30 seconds. But it doesn't repost what you put in. So I'm putting it in for you. If it helps, it's not timed out my end. Oh, that's good. Great. I wonder if that's because it released it when I hit the unbanned thing. I think, past shelf date, I think it's actually just because of the length of what you write, because I know there's one of the things that I've put in. There was nothing wrong with the actual comment from what I can tell. I think it's just for how long the amount of words were, because I've got some anti-spam bot rules in place. Actually, that's what this one is. This is just so you understand what it's about. And I'm just going to go back to what Coleslaw said. My mum was called a tomboy growing up, and she absolutely thrashed a guy bullying her once. Good on her. Good on her. So there you go. I don't mind you writing long comments. It's just that if you get timed out too many times, it gives you a longer and longer time out each time, and I don't want it to do that to you. Even if what you do is you write part of what you're saying, hit the enter button, and then write the next little, and then keep on writing. Burma shave yourself, yeah. Just cut Burma shave. The ads, for those who don't know, the ads for Burma shave used to be these tiny little wee signs that were hammered into the edge of the verge of the road when you were going down the main road, going into or out of town. And each one would just have a very, very super short statement on that added up into what it was that the ad was. And that's what the reference to Burma shave is. I reckon it was really clever the way they did that. We didn't do that here in New Zealand, but I'm very aware of the fact that that was how it was done. It's really cool. It's not a problem you posting, it's just that it's one of those things that my anti-spam setup is like that. And I don't want to change that just because if we do suddenly get a whole lot of bots coming in, spam bots, it needs to be all ready to go instead of me trying to clear it up afterwards. So that's why we've still got them in place. So yeah, just start typing, hit enter, keep typing, hit enter. So you get a series of little comments that are coming through. Not a problem. Right. Till he nearly choked, and they tied two others up as sparring cocks, that's sort of like cockfighting, today, and made them fight all dinner time. They're awfully rough on us little boys too at games. We have to fag till we nearly drop sometimes. And here's a word which I'm not going to do the dictionary thing for because I'm not too sure what it's going to come up with, and this is a family-friendly, a granny-friendly chat. Yeah, our gorgeous mountains are down on the South Island. We have lots of little windy hills, and our roads are very windy, unless you're on the motorway here. So that's why we didn't have them. And also Burma Shave, I don't know, it may have been a product that was here a long time ago, but it's definitely been, if it was, it died out very, very quickly, probably because we had our own versions of similar products in New Zealand. Fag. The word fag here in this context means in boarding schools and in grammar schools. Fagging was something that the juniors had to do, where they basically were servants to the seniors, and often it was kind of vindictive servanthood, where the seniors of the school, the ones who had some rank, would make the juniors do all sorts of horrible things just to rub in the authority that the seniors had. And that is called fagging. That's sort of making them do these jobs. If it was a boarding school, having to polish their shoes for them. And sometimes the older ones would deliberately get their shoes really dirty and scuffed up so that the juniors would have to do horrible work trying to get it all clean and tidy for them. Read the classics, illustrated Tom Brown's School Days, so no use of the word. Yeah, absolutely, it's familiar. There are some who won't have come across it, so that will help you. But it's great when people have a little bit more reading experience and actually already know what some of those words are. That word itself has gone through so many different meanings. One of the other uses is a fag in England can mean, giz a fag, mate, means, can I have one of your cigarettes? Cigarettes were fags. I don't know why, they just were. But usage of a word can change so much, and you can make a word have a meaning just by how you emphasize it and where you put it in a sentence too. And sometimes they can be rather derogatory, so we won't get into that. They're awfully rough on us little boys too at games. We have to fag till we nearly drop sometimes. That great hulking Taylor half kills young Ford now and then. I'm thankful he doesn't look my way. It's only Jones Minor who attends to me, and he's quite bad enough. I only wish I could catch him at it, said Peggy reflectively. And there for the present the matter ended. But a few days after this, the pony trap waited in vain, and Peggy, who had walked leisurely 3 times from the inn door to the end of the street, grew tired of loitering about, and sallied forth to look for the truant, her brother who was missing, who was meant to be there. It would be useless to try the highways, she knew, so accordingly her search must be in the byways, the back lanes. And she made a little tour of investigation round all the back streets between the inn and the grammar school, but without success. And she was just thinking she must have missed him and had better return to the inn yard when a fortunate chance prompted her to turn up a retired avenue which lay between the 2 main roads. It's a very quiet little place. It was a quiet spot, with long gardens leading to old-fashioned houses on the one side, and the tall palings of a cricket field on the other, just the spot where nobody would be likely to come along and make a disturbance. And so evidently Jones Minor seemed to think, for he held Bobby pinned against the wall with one hand, while with the other, he amused himself by tweaking his ears, pulling his hair, and any other tortures which his ingenious mind could suggest at that moment. At the sight of this edifying spectacle, Peggy flew onto the scene like Diana on the warpath, Diana being the goddess of war, part of their classics history that they used to have to learn, even for the girls. "Here," she cried indignantly. "Yes, I can well imagine." "You, Jones, just stop that, will you?" "Mind your own business, you, whoever you are," cried the boy rudely. "I'll do what I like." Bobby tried to dodge away, but the bully caught him by the arm and, partly to show off, commenced such an excruciating twist that the tears started to his victim's eyes, and though he did not utter a sound, it was too much for Peggy. She looked carefully round to see that no one was near, flung her books with a bang on the pavement, and simply went for Jones Minor. Here's a picture showing how it's going. Yeah, go Peggy! Absolutely, I agree. The assault was so utterly unexpected that he rolled over like a ninepin. Peggy might be small for her age, but she was strong and muscular, and she had the spirit of a coeur de lion, the heart of the lion, and the courage of a Joan of Arc. Her method of boxing was certainly not scientific, but she set to work to punish Jones Minor according to her own ideas of warfare. With 2 well-directed blows, she nearly closed his eyes before he had time even to see his assailant, so she punched him in each eye. She punched his head, tweaked his ears, and hammered into the soft portions of his body until he roared for mercy, for like all bullies, he was a coward at heart, and had a vague impression that someone very superior And like all bullies, he was a coward at heart, and had a vague impression that some very superior force must have suddenly descended upon him. "Oh, my goodness. Have you had enough?" said Peggy at last, with her foot on her foe's chest, and her fist at his swollen nose. "Yes, thank ye," faltered the snivelling Jones. "At least he understands that he has to be polite." Thanking her for the punishment, because that's what the older boys do to the younger ones. "Oh my, I am enjoying this," says past shelf date. "The kinds who tormented me for my first 9 years of school generally didn't touch me." I'm going to let you carry on writing. "Have you had enough?" said Peggy at last, with her foot on her foe's chest and her fist at his swollen nose. "Yes, thank ye," faltered the snivelling Jones. "Then swear on your honour, if you have any, that you'll never lay a finger on my brother again. If you'll promise that faithfully, we'll neither of us tell. But if you break your word, I'll let all Warford know that you've been knocked down and thrashed by a girl." Fabulous. "Generally didn't touch me, but they made me cry for 6 years. The faculty never stopped it." Yeah, unfortunately, bullying is just too endemic in some places. "And it cost me 30 years clinical depression, wishing for a terminal illness." Oh, that is terrible. I'm so sorry you had to go through that past shelf date. Yeah, unfortunately, there are so many people who've gone through bullying in one form or another, and the bullies themselves never seem to get their comeuppance. I have to admit, too, one of my midnight things that I watch is, actually I'm listening, but it's on YouTube, is r/ on YouTube, which is a Reddit sub-channel, does one called Revenge or something like that, pro-revenge, where people who've been badly treated by some other people find a way to punish them for it. It's not good stuff, but it's very satisfying. Anyway, I'm glad you've been in remission for the last 25 years. That's fabulous. Sometimes it takes actually having a major thing that you're having to deal with as a starting point for turning some other things around and how we respond to some things. not excusing the other people, but so that we in ourselves don't continue to be underneath what they have done in the past. They might feel like they've left us in a place where they're happy with where we were, beaten down. But we know we can choose to no longer be in that place. My daughter's just been through a bunch of stuff like that, not from school, but from other situations. And she's gone through some really, really good, helpful counselling things, learnt some really good ways of handling certain things. It's probably been something that has aggravated her back injury. That's not too unusual. The actual physical injury she had being aggravated by muscle tension within her body, working through that, a whole lot of other things. And I'm so glad you're in remission. That's great. And I Blue Wave says, I was drive lurking, just got home and getting dinner started. Awesome. So I'm going to carry on with reading. Yeah, I think we all love Peggy. I think she's wonderful. She's what we would like to see happening. So she's made sure that this bully knows that the whole town, both the schools, the boys' grammar school and the girls' school, or the village school, know that he was beaten up by a girl. That would be really humiliating for him, wouldn't it? So I'll let all Warford know that you've been knocked down and thrashed by a girl. Hooray, hooray, cried two voices, and two tall boys in grammar school caps came clambering over the palings from the cricket field, whence they had been the delighted but unseen witnesses of the encounter. By Jove, you're a girl worth knowing, said the taller boy. The way you rolled him flat was the funniest sight I've seen for many a year. Get up, Jones, you sneaking, drivelling cur. He kicked the prostrate form of that fallen chap. And if ever I catch you at any of your tricks with Vaughan again, I'll settle you myself. I promise you, though I don't know whether I could have done it any better than this, after all. Yes, shame that the school teachers want to burn these books. She's an excellent example, absolutely. Thankfully, not these days, the book burning ideas, but back in those days, oh my goodness. This was revolutionary, a girl who stuck up for not just herself, but also for others. Absolutely wonderful. I love it. I don't know if I could have done it any better than this, after all, he said, glancing with an eye of admiration at the victorious Peggy, who, with split gloves, because she had to wear gloves to and from school, that was normal, and they would have been more in the style of dress gloves, not woolly knitted ones. So yes, they wouldn't have had the stretch and they would have split. Scarlet cheeks and wild flying curls, stood panting after the contest. Golly, if you were my sister, I'd be proud of you, he continued, while the other boy picked up her hat from the roadway and collected her scattered school books. I like a girl with pluck, and you've got enough for 10 of 'em, I say, Vaughan. No, I say, Vaughan, I'll try you to fag for me if you like. You're a good runner, I hear, and no butterfingers. You can begin tomorrow. I would guess that these older boys didn't actually realise that he was picking on other younger ones, because a lot of the bullies are very sneaky about how they do it and make sure that nobody else knows. By the bus, there were crazy people who wanted to burn this book. What, the bus? Yeah. Sorry, there were. Not specifically this book, but the books by this author took off amongst schoolgirls at the time she was writing them. She wrote not series books, unlike the Mallory Towers books, the Chalet School books, which were all inspired by her schoolgirl stories. She wrote books where at the most there would be 3 books that had a connection with each other, but they were not a full-on series. There might be some characters in common or a school in common, but they were not ones that you had to read as a series. And she wrote quite a number of them. But this is the author who initiated the whole idea of books for girls being fun, that they could enjoy and have adventures, where they could have their own little sense of community and society, as she saw the potential for with girls that were at schools together and things like this. Often there'll be someone who's a bit of an outsider and things like that. In fact, a lot of the story tropes that go with schoolgirl stories, people think of them as being cliches when they read these books, when they first come across these books, because there's a lot of them in her books. But when she wrote them, they were not cliches. They were ideas that she was putting into the books. They became cliches because so many other people picked up on them and used them. Absolutely. There were schools, especially girls' schools, where the girls would, they'd be reading under their blankets at night and all sorts of things like this because they just thoroughly enjoyed them. They were fun books instead of being moralistic books. And there were schools who would confiscate them. There were schools that banned them. And there were even several schools that said that if they found anyone with those books, they would confiscate them and burn them. Honest. That was part of what was going on at the time when these books were written. So this one was written in, and I've got it on the overlay here, hang on, 1904. So yeah, quite revolutionary at the time for girls to be able to have books that were fun. Okay. So he's now telling this chap that he's going to have to fag for him. Good. And he is the captain of the School 11, said Bobby afterwards. This chap who admired Peggy. He's the captain of the School 11. So the School 11 is the top cricket team. It is the apex of the school teams, of any of their teams. This is, if you are the captain of the top school sports team, then you are the apex of the apex. You are right at the top of the pecking order of the school, and socially. And obviously he was not aware of this sort of thing was happening. He's the captain of the School 11, said Bobby afterwards, who would have felt it scarcely so great an honour to be noticed by the Prince of Wales. There isn't a boy in my class who isn't yearning to be Farrah's fag. So once again, yeah, getting the kids to do the work for them. But a decent senior will actually just be reasonable. And the juniors who fag for them will often get a lot of benefits, because if the seniors have got some sort of feast that they're having, they'll often include the younger ones with it or give them some nice bits and pieces to eat that nobody else gets. And they're treated kind of as a younger brother when it's done well. It's when it's done badly, it's when it's done harshly, that it's a horrible system. And a lot of the times in the boarding schools and grammar schools, it was not done nicely. And yeah, there's a lot of that sort of thing in Tom Brown's School Days, and also in Stalky and Co. If you read Rudyard Kipling's Stalky and Co., which is not one I'm going to be reading here because it's a little bit too much, that sort of thing, revenge, them taking revenge. It's very clever. The story's very well done. And as a teenager who had been picked on, it was very satisfying. But it's not one that I think is really a granny-friendly sort of a story, because it's fully immersed in the school bullying thing, and you deal with a bully by bullying them sort of thing, which, yeah, that kind of is actually what works, but it's not necessarily the best thing. So I'm just going to read a few more comments. I love that my alma mater, VCU, welcomes foreign students. That's great. I love that. And Squibble says, Roald Dahl's autobiography has a bit of it as well. Yeah, that's not uncommon from that era. The era where some families had people who were living and working over in India, and the children would come back and go to boarding schools. Roald Dahl's one of them, and there's a whole lot of other famous English authors that was a common part of the life at the time. So Past Shelf Day says, that's how one day I walked past some South Asian students playing cricket in the pouring rain in a small park. Their wicket was the wicket set was a plastic milk crate. So I know how fanatical people can be about cricket. Absolutely. And cricket in the islands has a whole other feel to it again. In fact, if any of you have read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series of books, cricket plays an important part in it. And Douglas Adams was brilliant at picking up on the threads, the cultural threads of something, and then just playing with those concepts and turning them around into something quite different. So we'll carry on. So, yeah, Bobby is just blown away that his sister, who has not only dealt with the bully, is now admired by the top boy of the school, the one that everyone admires. I'll never, Peggy, you're the, sorry, they'll be just wild with envy, his mates. They'll be just wild with envy. Peggy, you're about the biggest trump on the face of the earth, and I'll never forget this day if I live to be 100. Jones Minor also found he had good reason to remember the occasion, for as Farrar and Henderson felt no obligation to observe secrecy, his life at Walford Grammar School was for some time a burden to him. So they boasted about it. Probably because I knew nothing of cricket back then, decades ago. Yeah, it would have been. It's not the first one. It's probably about the third book that cricket comes into it, and it actually is used as a weapon. So yeah, you're welcome if you ever get back to it. It's a feature of at least one of the books. Quite a key point, and it's not cricket the way you're expecting it to be. Life at Walford Grammar for some time was a burden to him. Constant references as to his fondness for female society, that would have been quite a put down in those days, offers to see him home to protect him on the way, tender inquiries as to the state of his eyes and the condition of his ears, because she'd tweaked his ears and she'd punched him in the eyes, so he's probably ended up with black eyes from it. Filled him with confusion, while large portraits of Jones in the clutches of an imaginary Amazon, executed with schoolboy talent and vigour, adorned... Sorry, I accidentally turned a page the wrong way. Adorned the walls of the playground and the palings of the cricket field. They would have been drawn on with chalk and things like that. The only cricket I've ever seen was a tiny bit with a grandfather and a grandson. Yeah, casual cricket can be lots of fun. A proper cricket match is 5 days long and it's very slow, which is why they came up with one-day cricket matches, which are quite fun because it's a lot more fast-paced. It's a bit more like baseball, but played quite differently. In a movie set during the London Blitz. Cricket to the English is a little bit like baseball to the Americans in terms of it being a bat and ball sport, but it has a different way of being played. But it's as important culturally for them in a lot of ways. Peggy's onslaught really seemed to have done some good in the school, for the attention of the older and better boys was called to the subject of bullying. A stand was made, and public opinion ran high against it, so that for a time, at any rate, the little boys had peace, and Bobby was able to return daily by the ordinary high road instead of seeking the shelter of side paths and back alleys. Bobby's letter to Archie on the subject of the encounter, though hardly a model of orthography, was as stirring as the ballad of Chevy Chase. Now, Chevy Chase is not the actor, and it's not the whatever else it is that everybody else knows. It's actually something even more historic, which was a reference back at the time this was written, and I'm not even going to look it up. You can if you want. She laid the villain flat on the earth, and his spelling is really interesting. Laid, as in L-A-I-D, but he's writing it L-A-D-E, the villain with 2 eyes. Flat on the earth, E-R-T-H, and I just wish you could have seen her punch his head. So could is C-U-D, and head is H-E-D. He wrote, she knocked him about like a potato. Knocked has no K. Potato has 2 T's and then another T and then an E at the end. Yeah, he's not quite so good at that sort of part of it. She knocked him about like a potato. Peggy is awful strong when her blood is up, and she says she would do it again to save my life. Jones Minor stopped at home 2 days after. He couldn't stand the jeers of the other boys, and they still give him it badly. Farrar is jolly good to me now. I like fagging for him better than anything. Peggy won't talk about what she has done at all. She says she's rather ashamed of it now, and that you would think her a bigger tomboy than ever. But all the boys at school call her a brick, and so do I. And if she comes to see the boat race at Easter, they mean to cheer her. And a brick is a compliment in this context. Archie wrote back at once to congratulate the heroine, and Peggy treasured the letter for days until the new pet lamb accidentally chewed it up. It ran thus: "My dear Peggy, I think it was just elegant of you, and I won't call you T.B.Y. He's not writing it out in full, so she's not offended by it any more if you don't like it. Instead, I will christen you Takapunka, which is the language of the Chinkawas. And I think that the author has probably taken some liberties with First Nations languages here and probably has made this up completely, meaning girl afraid of nothing, for you were as good as one of our Indian braves. I only wish you had taken his scalp, but I suppose you hadn't time. When I come back at Easter, I'll teach you to box, and then you'll be ready for anybody. Only please don't tackle me. I shall have to be careful how I quarrel with you now. If I am home in time for the boat race, I shall come and cheer too. I am longing to get back to Gorswin. Bobby never said if the water wheel was all right. I hope no one has touched it while I've been away. Why don't you write and tell me all about it, and about Sky Cottage too? I shall have heaps of school news for you when I come home, and I have thought of several fresh things we can make, but I shan't tell you what they are until I see you, so curb your curiosity until the holidays. Hoping Prickles and the rabbits and all the other pets are well. Your affectionate friend, Archie Forster." And that's the end of the chapter and today's reading. So the next chapter is called Gorswin Fair, and that will be the one that they were talking about to do with the flowers, I would say. Anyway, so, there you go. Oh, Brick. I was going to tell you about Brick. You're welcome to keep on doing the puzzle while I keep talking. I'll be finishing shortly. Brick. English is an intriguing language, especially the British-based English rather than the American-based English. We use a lot of words a lot more to cross purposes than I'm aware of in American English. New Zealand English, we have our own idioms, but it's largely based on British English, a lot more so than American English is, because there's been a whole choice to spell things completely different. Thank you to Mr. Webster, who wrote the dictionary, and it makes sense. It's made it more logical, but there are some aspects of it that those of us with a more British background would miss. I like having use in certain words like colour, where it shows where the word has come from, or part of the word has come from, and things like that. May I offer you all an actual Burma shave from my Sunday night tabletop RPG? Go for it. I recall C.S. Lewis used brick that way in one of his Narnia books. Yes, absolutely. It would have been confusing if you didn't know. So I'll let you carry on if there's anything else you wanted to add to that, just by the way. So brick, I was aware when I was growing up that English often has words where when you use it one way, it has a positive meaning, but you use the exact same word in a different context, figurative, they're both figurative, it can have a completely opposite meaning. So I'll let you keep writing, and then I'll read that out for those who are watching on YouTube. That way you don't miss out on the chat. I read it out for you. In case you're wondering why I interrupt myself sometimes to read out people's comments, it's so you can feel part of it, because you're part of the community too, just that you're not actually here when I'm live. So, brick. Stick is another one. He's got the wrong end of the stick, implies that someone really has misunderstood something. So that's a negative usage of the word stick. Okay, you can see what I mean there? And someone's a good old stick means they're a good person, a solid person, a trustworthy person, one that you really respect. And brick is similar. You can talk about someone being a good old brick, someone who's very reliable and someone you'd trust, you admire them greatly, but they're not necessarily fancy in any way. The opposite of not the opposite, but the opposite the meaning is not the opposite, but that is a positive use, and the opposite, the negative use, is he's thick as two bricks. Or he's as thick as a brick, means someone who really is just not thinking about what they've said, about what's going on or anything like that. And the same word brick is used in both of those, and one for a very positive use and the other one for a very negative use. And English has so many ways of doing that sort of thing. So I'm going to read out what Past Shelf Life is saying. May I offer you all an actual Burma shave from my Sunday night tabletop RPG. I recall C.S. Lewis used brick that way in one of the Narnia books. A little setting first. We were tracking goblins, and we could tell that they were leading us on. Donald, our most clever player, offered this. Don't you worry, don't you fear. Goblin ambush will soon be here. Burma shave. Because that's the way they used to write those ads, was short, snappy phrases building into a rhyme, a poem, and then the punch, and then the final concluding statement was Burma shave. Sadly, yes, Thick has been messing with brick. Yeah, absolutely. Donald, sorry about the typo. Not a problem, because we're not involved in your game, so it doesn't really matter whether it's Donald, which is an Irish name, or Donald. Oh, and by the way, if you're using Donald as one of the more true Irish spellings of it, has an M in the middle of it. Domnhal is Donald. Like Donald, but without the D on the end. And that's actually how it's spelled. Just to be intriguing. And Irish is such a completely different language. So completely different. They have letters that make sounds which, when you know that they do, you spot it and you recognise it and you can say it. But because those letters are so imprinted in my brain with English pronunciations, my brain does not supply those sounds for when you have those combinations. So you get hard consonants when you normally have a softer consonant. When you have something that's an M or an N, you sometimes have these other sounds in there as well. And like Kiva, the name Kiva, and you or I might spell it Kiva or Keeva. Caiomhe is the actual Irish spelling of the name Kiva. And I shall leave you with that as today's intriguing little bit of learning. So look up, see if you can think of any other Irish names and look them up and see if you can find out. People will often use what they call modern spellings like Keeva. We've got a friend whose daughter's name is Kiva, spelt the Irish way because she's Irish, the mother's Irish. But for certain uses, like not official paperwork for school, but so that people can read it and know how to say it, people who don't know her, she writes Kiva, just because it's a little bit less complicated than Caiomhe. And then you get other ones that, like, I know someone called Chow. Have a guess on how that one's spelt. That is not Irish. It's another one again, from a different language again. I'm waiting for some guesses on how to spell chow. So I learned that CZULC is an easier European way of spelling the name, spelled more commonly as SCULTZ and pronounced the same way, chow, CHAO. Or was it SZULC? No, not that at all. Totally different part of the world. This is from China. And no, I'm not talking about using Chinese characters. I'm actually talking about how it's written in normal Western lettering. SZULC, yeah. That's not too surprising, actually. I mean, not what I would have guessed how to say it, but the combinations of letters kind of seem vaguely familiar. I'm guessing they're from the ex-Yugoslavia and those sort of countries, and I can't remember what they call that region anymore, where it's northwest of Greece, northeast of Italy, the other side of the Adriatic Sea. A lot of them have those sort of, and also Polish, which is further up, probably a result of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. That's it. Yeah. So the chow I know is spelled Qiao, but goes by the name Amy just because when people see it written down, they have no idea how to say it because there's not even a U in it. Qiao. It's pronounced chow. And the name of the Chinese takeaway uses that name on it, even though everyone knows them as Amy. And probably don't even, the ones who don't know the family name, the family familiar name being Chow, probably don't have any idea that that's why it's called Chow. I mean, it looks kind of like it's Chinese but been transliterated, but don't realise that that's who that person is. Jevvv is the name of a type of smoked pork sausage that we used to get when we were over in England, and it was delicious. And I used to use it for making a dish that supposedly was Dutch, but it was the nearest sausage I could get that was really, really yummy. Jevvv, and I can't remember how to spell it, but it's got J's and CH's in it and all sorts of things like this, and some vowels in different arrangements to what I expected. But the English lady with a very English accent who was behind the deli counter had actually spent time over in the country that was from and had friends from there, and they had told her that this is how you're meant to say it. So I would look at the label written on it in the deli serve over and go, some of that please. And so she'd say Jevvv, and I'd go, yeah. And I'd say the word in my head, and I'd be reading. I'm still talking so you can do the puzzle. And I'd be reading the sign, trying to figure out how those letters made it say that. And it kind of started to go with it, so that I would recognise it and know exactly what it was. So past shelf date says, with my comic strips, I plan to feature an alternate Earth where they skip the wars. Okay. I'm going to let you keep on writing because this sounds intriguing. That's the other thing with breaking your text into small sections, is it kind of just sort of leads people on further into the story of what you're telling. And those of you who want to go off and do something else, that's not a problem. Exchanging restaurants. And go straight to the part that always follows. Exchanging restaurants. That sounds like a brilliant idea. We won't have wars. We will just show that we've had these exchanges culturally by having Polish restaurants in the middle of somewhere that's very English, or Indian restaurants in a very Scottish area, and all sorts of things like this, but without the wars that were involved that meant that people actually moved somewhere else and cooked their own food for other refugees, or other reasons for that happening, or people going in and being somewhere for a time like soldiers and then bringing home looking forward to the foods that they had enjoyed while they were away and trying to find something to replicate that. So that sometimes also happens. So one of the things that used to amuse me was discovering that England and Scotland have a lot of Indian restaurants, more than you would expect for the number of Indians who live there, and Pakistanis and other people from the Indian subcontinent. And they're run by people from different regions in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and other places like that, part of that whole collection of different cultures. And they're not just patronised by their own people going there to have a taste of home and not cooking their own meals at home, but actually wanting to go out and have their own type of food. But there are a lot of English people and Scottish people, I don't know about the Welsh and the Irish, sorry, who frequent these restaurants as well. In fact, I've got a very English friend who's got a mixed background, but not quite what you'd expect. I'm not going to say African American because there's no American in there. His dad was African, and I can't remember which part of Africa. There's a lot of people with an African background in England, and and they've had nothing whatsoever to do with America. And so when you first go over there, if you're used to American television and you see a newsreader who looks like who looks like an African American, you're a little bit surprised because they start talking and reading this news out, and they're talking with a full-on English accent. And this is after the era of the BBC received English pronunciation. So it's not the really posh type English. They're actually talking with their own natural regional English accent. So he was from a particular part of London. It was a nice accent, but it's very much a local London accent because he's English, born and bred, and has been for generations. But it's a little bit of a head spinner if you go into the country not having thought about that. Yeah, Lister loved Vindaloo, that whole thing. If you've not thought about it before and you go over there and you go, hang on a minute, the African guy on the news that's reading the news that sounds very English is English because his family have been in England for more generations than my family have been in New Zealand. And my family have been in New Zealand for quite a long time, because they may have originally been slave traded, or they may have actually also, there were some who travelled because they developed working relationships with different European people who had gone down into parts of Africa and had come across as visitors and ended up staying and living there and actually been accepted in higher parts of society because they'd done enough work, they had enough money, therefore they were kind of accepted on a more equal footing. Not everybody was a slave. But it's just people who look not quite what you're expecting in the context of where you're seeing them. Anyway, so this friend of mine who looks very much as part African, and he talks with a very, very Midlands Birmingham accent because he was born and bred in Birmingham. It's a very distinctive accent. And so he would talk like Lister in Red Dwarf, like Lister in Red Dwarf. He would talk about getting a curry, having a takeaway. His favourite was, probably was Vindaloo, the hotter the better and all this sort of stuff. But your mind initially, if you come from somewhere like New Zealand where most Indian food, until you get used to it yourself, is eaten by Indian people, it's like, there's a white English guy going into that Indian takeaway shop like it's the most normal thing in the world. Well, it is the most normal thing in the world because that's his local takeaway. And they've been eating like that for a long time. So, it was quite interesting going over to England and getting used to differences. And this is what it showed me was you think that you may not have racist attitudes or you may not have classist attitudes or anything like this, but put yourself into a setting that is completely outside of your own normal culture that you grew up in, and you will find that there are things that slap you in your face and say, oh, you thought you didn't have certain attitudes. Maybe you do. Maybe you need to work on this. Anyway, thank you for doing that puzzle. Thank you for being here. Red doesn't surprise me. I'm an old Hoovian. No, that's true. That's good. Well done. Exchanging restaurants is a brilliant idea. Yeah. However, don't expect me to ever be able to identify regional UK accents. There are a couple of people on YouTube that are worth actually going and watching their videos where they will do English accents and they will do them very accurately because they are linguists themselves and they look at the way sounds are produced inside the mouth, the throat, the way you produce the volume of air that's used and that sort of stuff. And don't worry about trying to identify them. Just enjoy them. No worries. But go and look up some of them and have a listen. And especially the fact when you get somebody who actually will be saying something in one accent and sound completely, and you'll recognise some of the accents, I'm telling you now. And then they'll flip into something else which is so completely different, but it will still be accurate because they actually have the right feel for these different sounds. So Christmas in the kitchen, that's wonderful. I like that. So anyway, great to have you all here. I'm going to get, I can understand. White kids were mean to me, black kids weren't. Often the people who have been bullied and picked on themselves are the ones who are not going to do it themselves if they recognise that it's a general thing that's happening. Unless it's somebody who's just taken it on board and said, I'm going to pass this on. And unfortunately, there can be individuals who do that. My tribe are all the people who would never laugh because they made someone cry. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Your friends who don't laugh at something because it made somebody cry. That's good. I like that. Thank you. So good to have you all here. I'm not going to go and host again just because it's nearly 5:30 and I need to go and do something about dinner. Great to have you all here. I really love sharing all the time with you. And I know that for those who are watching on YouTube, there are so many rabbit trails, diversions, all sorts of things like that. But really enjoy all the different things that we discuss along the way as part of our exploration of the different stories, discovering new things about it. And the story itself still stands up, even if we have all those things happening. Thanks for being here. I look forward to seeing you next time. It will be fun. And I already told you what the new chapter was, and I can't remember what it was, so we'll leave it at that. See you next time. And in the meantime, happy reading. Bye.